We're now going to take a look at how to analyze resolution for print jobs. Now, you don't need to analyze screen graphics because all you have to do is look at the image. You'll see how big it is and you'll see if it looks good or not. As I said, what you see is what you get. But for print graphics, you can't simply look at the image on the screen and figure out whether or not it's going to print well. You're going to have to analyze the print resolution. Now, to do that, let's first open up an image. Come here to the mini bridge. We need to go to the lesson 2 resolution. And we want to open up this file here called 01 low res. Now, I do want to point out, if somebody says that's a low resolution image or that's a high resolution image, they're really not correct. Because any image, if printed small enough, can become a high resolution image. You could print an image the size of a postage stamp and it may look great, but if you try to make a poster of it, it may look bad. So for a postage stamp, it's high resolution. For a poster, it's low resolution. So whether it's low or high resolution is not set in stone with any image. Now, all image size and resolution decisions and changes are made using the image size function in Photoshop. To get this, you have to go to the image menu and you'll see image size, or you can use the keyboard shortcut of Alt-Control-I. Now, those interested in print only need to look at this document size. Pay no attention to this right here. This is only of interest to people who are doing screen graphics. However, the size here is relevant to both screen and web graphics. So we're going to be concerned right down here. Now, by analyzing resolutions, what I mean is we need to figure out exactly what size print we can get at different resolutions. Particularly, can we get a print the size we need with a resolution of somewhere between 200 and 300. And we want to try and do this by using only the native pixels, just the pixels the image was created with. There's another thing called resampling, which actually adds or deletes pixels from the image. We don't want to do that yet. You might have to do that in the future, but you don't want to do it at first. We just want to see what sizes can we get with the pixels that we're given. To do that, we're going to have to turn off resample image. And before you do that, be sure that scale, styles, and constrained proportions is checked on, because if you turn it off, you'll see that you can no longer get to this. What constrained proportions is, that makes it so that if you enlarge the width, the height goes the same proportion. Otherwise, it would get stretched out of shape. And scale styles means that if you had a drop shadow on there, for example, when you scale it down, the drop shadow has to scale down as well. Or if you enlarge it, the drop shadow has to enlarge as well. At this point, all we want to do is come in here and see maybe what size print we can get at 300 dpi. We know right now I can get a 5.88 at a 5.2 inch print at 75 dpi. Now, 75 dpi is not good. Obviously, that'll be a low resolution jaggedy image. So all you have to do is come in here and type in 300 and see what size you'll get. It means at 300 dpi, I can get a 1.5 by a 1.3 inch print out of this of good quality. Now, if you're trying to put this image on the cover of a magazine, maybe 8.5 by 11 or 8 by something, obviously that's not going to work. So what you might do is lower the resolution. Try 250. And you can see the size gets a little bit bigger. 1.7 by 1.55. That's not going to go on the cover of the magazine either. And you can maybe try 200. 2.2 by 1.95. Again, that's much too small to fill up the cover of the magazine. You can also come in here and just type in the height or width you want. Let's say I want an 8 inch wide. And you'll see that I can get an 8 by 7, but I'm only going to have 55 pixels per inch, and that's not any good. So this picture here is not going to fit on the cover of the magazine using the native pixels. Now, I want to point out, so far, we have done nothing to damage the image. We're just taking the pixels that there are, and if we make the image bigger, the pixels spread out. If we make the image smaller, the pixels get more compacted together. A good analogy of that is, let's say we have a box of marbles, and I'm going to hit cancel right here, and I'm going to open up 2 other pictures. I had these opened earlier, so I'm just going to come to File, Open Recent. I've got 300 marbles I want to open, and File, Open Recent, 75 marbles. Now, you do not have these images. These are just for classroom purposes. Let's say you have a box of 300 marbles, and say it's 1 square foot, and you decide to double the size of that box, which means you're going to add a foot over here, 2 up here. Well, what happens to the marbles is they just spread out. You end up with basically 75 marbles in each square foot. You still have 300 marbles. We didn't do anything to the number of marbles we have. So as you make that bigger, the marbles get more spread out. Taking that to what we're talking about with pixels, if you make an image bigger, your pixels get more spread out. If they get more spread out, the quality goes down. If you make the box smaller, the marbles get more condensed. You're never going to get more than 300 marbles in there, but now you might have more per square inch if you make the box smaller. And that's what we've been doing over here with this one. We're just simply taking the existing marbles, as long as we turn resample off, typing in a resolution and seeing what we're going to get. Notice the file size, a 0.5 megabyte, doesn't change no matter what, which means we're not adding or deleting any pixels. There's something neat I want to show you real quick. It has nothing to do with resolution. But if you've messed around with the parameters of any one of these dialog boxes that opens up, and you think, well, I want to get back to where it started, most people would hit cancel and then open up the image size again, and it would reset back to where you started. Well, what you can do is hold the Alt key, and the cancel button turns into a reset. Works on most of these dialog boxes. When I click that, there it goes. It resets back to the beginning. I'll turn off resample again. Now, because I have never actually done anything to this image other than rearrange its native pixels, I could hit OK, close this image, even save over it, reopen it, and nothing has changed. I come over here to image size. It's still 1.47 by 1.33. If I came to what we had originally, 75 pixels, it's right back to the same thing. So as long as we haven't resampled, which we've done by turning this off, we're not doing anything in the image. You can save over it, and you haven't really damaged anything. Now, the question is now, what do you do if you go down to 200 dpi and you can't get the size you want? If I wanted that 8x7 out of this, obviously I'm not going to get it using the pixels that this image was created with. In the next lesson, we'll take a look at resampling, which is either deleting or adding fictitious pixels to the image, which allows you to maintain that 300 dpi. Photoshop can do that and does a pretty good job of it up to a certain extent. But before resorting to resampling, there's a few things that you can try. If you end up below 200 to get the size you need to inform the client that this image is not suitable for quality print purposes. And one thing you can do is maybe pick another image. Maybe there's a similar image that would allow you to get the size you want at a higher resolution. Number 2 is you might just rephotograph these shoes or whatever the picture is. You might attempt that. Number 3, try to find the original. Now, the photographer might have given the client this picture here for their website, and he may still have the original full resolution picture. So you might try to track down the photographer or the designer and see if they have the larger resolution image. A lot of times, if this is a logo or something, you scan a business card or you got it off a website, and you try to find the graphic designer. Well, that logo might have been made 20 years ago, and who knows where the graphic designer is. It might not even been created in any of these electronic programs that are used today. In that case, you probably want to hire somebody to redraw that logo. When you draw logos, you want to use drawing programs such as Illustrator. There's a few others out there. Those create vector images. Vector does not use pixels. And because it does not use pixels, you can make it as large as you want or small as you want. You can put it on a billboard, and it will be just as sharp as if you printed it on a business card. Photographs and scans, however, as we mentioned, are made up of pixels, so there's a maximum size they can get before they start getting worse quality. Now, if you can achieve the size you need and you're somewhere between 250 and 300, I wouldn't even mention it to the client. If you're between 200 and 250, you might mention to see if you can get another picture or the original, but I wouldn't go too far out of my way to do so. At 200 dpi, you should still get a decent print. But anything below that, now it's time, like I said, to find an alternate or maybe attempt to resample. And that's what we're going to look at in the next lesson, how to resample, both upsampling and downsampling. Upsampling would be enlarging, downsampling would be reducing the size. So we'll see you there.